Ethan walked alone under the red sky. The ground around him was dry and cracked. Broken metal and black stones scattered across the land. The war between humans and alien tribes had ended weeks ago, but the place still smelled like smoke and Ashy was there to collect parts from wrecked ships, something he often did to trade for food and water, but that day felt strange. The wind was too quiet, and he had a feeling something or someone was watching him. As he climbed over a broken wing of a fallen ship, he heard it, a soft cry, like a whisper carried by the wind. He stopped, held his breath, and listened again. There it was, a faint sound, almost like a whimper, weak and full of pain. Curious and careful, Ethan followed the noise, stepping over burned wires and shattered glass. Behind a pile of metal, he saw her, a girl, or something that looked like a girl, curled up on the cold ground. Her skin was pale silver, her long hair tangled and dusty. Her clothes were torn, and her body was shaking. But the most shocking part was her eyes. They were glowing red, dim but still alive. Ethan didn't move. His heart beat faster. He had heard of creatures like her, vampire aliens, beings who drank blood to survive, hunted by both humans and aliens, everyone said. They were dangerous, monsters without mercy, but this one didn't look like a monster. She looked scared, broken, and lost. She tried to speak, but no words came out, just a dry gasp. Her lips parted slightly, and Ethan saw her sharp fangs. Still, she didn't attack, she didn't move. She just looked at him with tired eyes then. Her body went limp, and she collapsed onto the ground. Unconscious, Ethan stood frozen, unsure what to do. He could walk away, leave her there to die. But something inside him stopped him, a feeling he didn't understand. He stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wild animal. She didn't move, didn't even breathe loud. He knelt beside her, placed his hand on her shoulder. Her skin was ice cold. Without thinking too much, he lifted her in his arms, surprised by how light she was. He carried her back to his small camp, a tent made from scrap cloth and metal, hidden behind a rock wall. Ethan laid her on the softest blanket he had, then lit a small fire. He boiled water and soaked a cloth, wiping the dirt from her face. She looked younger now, like someone his age, maybe even younger. He placed a bottle of water near her lips, but she turned her head away. He tried again, but she made a soft sound, almost like a growl. Hours passed, and the night came. The stars above were bright, and the camp was quiet. Ethan sat near her, watching her chest rise and fall slowly. Then suddenly, she opened her eyes. She looked around, confused, then stared at him. He didn't move, just raised his hands to show he meant no harm. She opened her mouth, trying to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. He leaned closer and heard the word that made his blood run cold. Blood. As Ethan pulled back a little, unsure if he heard right, she closed her eyes, biting her lower lip, her fangs shining in the firelight. She was hungry, not for food, not for water, but for something living. And he was the only one there still. She didn't attack him. Instead, she turned her face away, ashamed. Ethan saw her hands gripping the blanket tightly, as if she was fighting the hunger inside her. She was dying, and still she refused to hurt him. He didn't understand why. Maybe she wasn't like the stories. Maybe she wasn't a monster. As the wind howled outside the camp, Ethan stared at the pale girl lying on his blanket. He had no idea who she was, what she truly needed, or what danger might come next. But he knew one thing for sure. This was not a normal night, and whatever happened from here on, his life was about to change forever. Ethan sat by the fire, the sky outside turning dark blue, stars blinking above. The broken world. The girl hadn't moved much, but her eyes opened from time to time, glowing softly like two dying flames. She looked at him like she was seeing something impossible. Not a threat, not a monster, just a boy who didn't run. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak, her arms trembling under her own weight. Ethan moved closer and held out the water bottle again. Her lips parted, but not to drink. She whispered that same word again. Blood. It came out slower this time, almost like a cry. Ethan didn't answer, didn't react. He just watched her with wide eyes and a nervous heart. He wasn't sure what scared him more, what she was, or what she might become if she didn't. Feed. The girl closed her eyes and turned her head away. Ethan could see it in her face. The hunger was eating her from the inside. Her fingers dug into the blanket, and her sharp nails tore small holes into the fabric. She didn't beg, she didn't scream, she just waited. Ethan knew she was holding back something powerful, something painful. The air around her felt heavy, like something deep and old was inside her body. He had never seen a creature like her. So dangerous, yet so fragile at the same time. He looked down at his arm, thinking about what she needed. The idea felt crazy, completely insane. But the longer he waited, the weaker she became. Her lips were dry, her face pale, her breathing shallow. He asked her name, but she didn't answer, only blinked slowly, as if her mind was slipping away. Hours passed like days, and Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, walked outside into the cold night, and stared at the stars. His heart was full of noise, full of questions. What was he doing? Why did he bring her to his camp? What did he expect to happen? He looked down at his hands, then closed his eyes and whispered to the wind. "She's not evil," he said to no one. "She's just alone." He walked back into the camp, sat beside her again, and spoke softly. "I don't know your name," he said, "and I don't know what you've been through. But if you need blood to live, and you're still fighting it, then maybe you're not a monster." She didn't open her eyes, but he could feel the way her fingers loosened, just a little. Ethan reached into his pack, pulled out a small knife he used for cutting wires. He held the blade in one hand, stared at it for a long time. His breath shook, but he moved the knife close to his wrist. Then her voice cut through the silence like a soft scream. "No." She opened her eyes wide, her red glow bright now, burning even in the firelight. Her voice was cracked and dry, but her meaning was clear. "No," she said again, with more force. She looked at the knife, then at him, and then tears filled her glowing eyes. Ethan dropped the knife, surprised by her sudden strength. She was shaking her head over and over, her lips trembling. He leaned in and asked, "Why, you'll die if you don't drink." She looked away, then whispered something soft, something that didn't sound like English. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he understood the pain. She didn't want to be saved that way, not if it meant hurting someone. Even a few drops of blood felt like too much to ask. He sat beside her, not speaking, just breathing. She was a vampire alien, feared across the galaxy, yet here she was, too kind or too broken to bite. Ethan stared at the dying fire, feeling the weight of the moment. He had a choice to make, not just about her survival, but about what kind of human he wanted to be. The night stretched on, the wind whispering outside the camp. Inside, the silence between them said more than words. And though she hadn't fed, though her body was weak, she closed her eyes not with fear, but with trust. And that, more than anything, made Ethan's heart ache. He didn't know how to save her, not yet, but he knew one thing. He would not leave her alone, no matter what came next. The fire had died, but Ethan was still awake. He sat near her, legs crossed, arms around his knees, eyes staring at nothing. The girl hadn't moved in hours. Her breath was soft, fading like the last light before night takes over. He didn't know how much longer she could last. He didn't know how much longer he could wait. A noise in the dark made him jump. The wind had knocked something over outside, but his thoughts didn't leave her. Not for a second. She was inside his mind now, like a soft voice he couldn't silence. He had no reason to care this much, but he did. It wasn't just about saving her. It was about doing something good in a world full of ruin. He looked at her again, her lips parted, her skin so pale it looked like moonlight. She was not moving, not crying, not even dreaming, just slowly fading away. He hated seeing her like that. Hated feeling useless. He reached for the small knife again, hands shaking slightly. She didn't stop him this time. Her eyes opened weakly, watching him, but without fear. She knew what he was about to do. Maybe she had no strength left to stop him, or maybe she had given up. Ethan swallowed hard and spoke. "I'm not doing this because I'm brave," he said quietly. "I'm doing this because no one else will." He took a deep breath, then made a small cut on his wrist. A thin line of blood appeared, warm and red under the fire's weak glow. He held out his hand to her, palm up, blood dripping slowly down his arm. She didn't move, not at first. Then something in her eyes changed. It wasn't hunger, it was pain, shame, and disbelief. All at once, she shook her head weakly. But her eyes were fixed on the blood. Her body trembled as if every part of her was fighting itself. Ethan didn't pull back. He whispered, "It's okay." Slowly, carefully, she sat up. Her arms like twigs ready to snap. She crawled closer. Her movements slow, unsure. Then she reached out and took his wrist in her cold hands. Her lips touched his skin, and for a second, nothing happened. Then her fangs slid out, and she bit down. Gently, like a whisper, Ethan winced, the pain sharp, but not unbearable. He watched her eyes close as the color returned to her cheeks. She wasn't drinking wildly. She wasn't a beast. She was careful, only taking what she needed, just enough to breathe again. She let go after a few seconds and backed away, falling onto the blanket. Her chest rose and fell faster, her body shaking not from hunger, but from something else. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and silver. Ethan wiped his arm with cloth and looked at her, surprised by how human she looked. She covered her face with her hands. As if ashamed, he didn't say anything, didn't ask questions. He just handed her a small piece of bread and sat beside her. After some time, she spoke. Her voice was still weak but clearer than before. "My name is Virea," she said, almost like a secret. He smiled, just a little, and nodded. "I'm Ethan," he replied. "Nice to meet you, Virea." She looked at him like the words didn't make sense, like no one had said them to her before then. She smiled back, a small, tired smile, but real. For the first time, she didn't seem like a creature from a nightmare. She looked like a girl who had been alone too long. The night grew colder, but the space between them felt warm now. Ethan felt lightheaded but calm. Virea closed her eyes and rested. No longer shaking, she was safe for now. But Ethan didn't know that far beyond the hills, someone else had noticed the bond between them. And soon, something dark would come looking for the girl who dared to survive, and the human boy who offered his blood. Ethan's wrist still carried the mark of her bite, small and red like a secret shared between two strangers. He had bandaged it quickly, not out of fear, but to hide it from the wind and the dust. But the warmth of her lips, the sharpness of her fangs, and the strange calm that followed, those things stayed with him. Even now, as he watched her sleep beside the dying fire, he could still feel it, not just on his skin, but somewhere deeper. Something had changed between them, and neither of them knew what it truly meant. Virea stirred, her silver hair glowing faintly under the starlight that leaked through the torn roof of the shelter. Her body no longer looked fragile. Her breathing was stronger, her skin less pale. But her mind was still a storm, full of memories and fears Ethan could not see. She opened her eyes slowly, and when she looked at him, there was a strange silence between them. Not cold, not awkward, just quiet, like both of them knew the moment they shared could not be undone. Ethan reached into his pack and handed her another piece of bread. She accepted it with a soft nod, her fingers still shaking slightly. She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who hadn't eaten real food in years. Then she looked at his bandaged wrist and whispered, "Did it hurt?" He smiled and shook his head. "Not as much as I expected," he said. Virea looked down, her eyes filled with guilt. "I took too much," she whispered. "I felt it." Ethan tilted his head, confused. "Felt what?" She hesitated, then placed her hand on her chest. "You," she said, "your fear, your pain, your thoughts." His heart skipped. "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked at him, her red eyes soft now, not glowing like before. I didn't just take blood. She said, I connected with you. Ethan sat back, trying to understand. Is that normal? He asked. No, she replied. Only with someone who gives freely. He didn't know what to say, but suddenly the air felt heavier. Virea stood slowly, her legs stronger than before, but her expression still tense. She walked to the edge of the shelter, looking out into the quiet wasteland. There's something else, she said after a long pause. When I drank, I saw something. Ethan rose to his feet and followed her gaze. What did you see? He asked. She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. A shadow, she said, with eyes like fire. He frowned. What is it? She shook her head. It hunts my kind. It feeds on what we feed on, but it doesn't stop. Before Ethan could speak, she clutched her side and fell to her knees. He rushed to her, but she raised her hand to stop him. Her skin shimmered strangely, like a ripple passing through her body. Then for a moment, her eyes flashed gold instead of red. It was like something else had tried to speak through her and failed. She gasped and leaned into Ethan's chest, breathing fast. It's too soon, she said. I'm not ready. He held her steady, unsure what was happening, but he knew something wasn't right. Virea looked up at him with fear, not for herself, but for him. The bond is growing, she said. I didn't mean for it to happen. He tried to calm her. It's okay. We'll figure this out. But her next words made his heart go cold. They will come for me, she said, and when they find you, they will come for you too. Ethan clenched his jaw, eyes scanning the horizon. He thought he had found a girl in need, but now he was standing next to a storm. He helped her back to the blanket, covered her with his jacket, then let them come, he whispered. We won't run. Virea looked at him again, her eyes full of something that felt like sorrow and hope. She didn't want him to fight for her, but it was too late. He had already bled for her, already shared a part of himself. Now, whether they liked it or not, their fates were tied. Outside, the wind grew stronger. Somewhere far away, something ancient woke from sleep, drawn by the taste of blood and the flicker of a bond that should never have existed. Ethan dreamed of red stars, of cold voices calling him from places he didn't know. He saw Virea standing on the edge of a cliff, her silver hair floating in a wind that didn't blow. Her eyes were glowing gold, not red, and she whispered something he couldn't hear. Then the ground cracked beneath her feet, and something dark pulled her away. He reached out, but his hand passed through smoke, and she vanished into the shadows. He woke up with a sharp breath, heart racing, sweat on his forehead despite the cold morning air. Virea was already awake, sitting by the fire, hugging her knees, staring into the flames like they were telling her secrets. She looked calm, but too still, like someone waiting for bad news. Ethan moved closer, sitting beside her, not saying anything at first. Then he asked quietly, Did you dream too? She nodded slowly, not looking at him. I saw the hunters, she said. They're close now. Ethan swallowed hard. How close? 2 days, she whispered. Maybe less. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the sky pressing down on their shoulders. But Ethan didn't panic, didn't plan to run. Instead, he asked something that had been burning in his chest since the night she fed. What did you really do to me, Virea? She turned her head toward him, her face unreadable. I bonded with you, she said. But I didn't mean to. He frowned. What does that even mean? She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting in the fabric of her cloak. It means, you're not just human anymore, she said. Not completely. Ethan blinked, confused and a little scared. What are you talking about? Virea looked into his eyes, serious and sad. When you gave your blood freely, something ancient awakened between us, she said. My kind used to bond only with those they trusted completely. But no one has done it in centuries. He leaned back, taking it in slowly. So now I can. What, hear your thoughts? He joked, trying to lighten the air, but she didn't laugh. You feel things I feel, she said. You will sense danger when I do. Pain when I'm hurt. And if I die, she added softly, a part of you may break forever, Ethan. Fell quiet, the wind outside whispering through the torn fabric of their shelter. He didn't know what to say, but strangely, he wasn't angry. He looked at her and saw someone carrying pain too big for her small frame, and somehow he wasn't. Afraid of being part of it. Then we better make sure you don't die, he said with a small grin. Varaya looked down, then smiled too, just a little, but it faded quickly. They're not just hunters, she said. They're soul breakers. They feed on what we feed on: life, memory, hope. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. What do they want with you? She touched the center of her chest. I hold the last spark of my bloodline, she said. They want to erase it forever. He stood, grabbed his tools, and walked to the edge of the camp. Then we fight, he said without turning around. Varaya stood slowly, watching him, her voice soft. You don't even know how to fight them. He looked back, eyes steady. Maybe not, he said. But I know how to stand between a monster and someone I care about. Varaya stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the dusty ground. She reached out, touched his arm. You don't have to protect me, she said. I'm not helpless. I know, Ethan said. But maybe I'm not either. In that quiet moment, something settled between them. Not just the bond, but trust. They were no longer strangers, no longer prey hiding from shadows. They were something new, two souls tangled by blood, choice, and a promise neither of them spoke out loud. Far beyond the hills, black ships moved across the sky like silent ghosts. And inside one of them, a creature with no face whispered Varaya's name like a curse. It could smell the bond, and it hungered for the human who had dared to give her hope. It started with the birds, not the sound of wings or singing, but silence. Sudden and wide, Ethan noticed it first. Standing outside their shelter as the wind carried only dust, not a single chirp, not even the buzz of insects. Just silence, too perfect to be natural. He turned to Varaya, who was already standing, eyes locked on the distant sky. Her face had gone pale again. Not from weakness, but from memory. They're here, she said, not blinking, not breathing. And then the ground trembled, ever so slightly, like something massive had brushed against the world. Black clouds rolled in without warning, but they weren't clouds at all. They moved too fast, too smooth, and they didn't bring rain. Ethan narrowed his eyes and saw the truth. Ships, shaped like knives and shadows, cutting through the sky without a sound. They don't want to be seen, he said under his breath. Varaya nodded. They don't need to. Ethan grabbed his gear. Whatever little he had, an old rifle, a worn blade, a flare gun with one shot. Varaya reached behind her and unwrapped something wrapped in cloth. A thin spear with a black handle and silver tip, glowing faintly like it remembered war. This belonged to my sister, she said, gripping it tightly. She didn't get the chance to fight. They stood at the edge of their camp, side by side, the world growing darker as the ships began to land. One touched down half a mile away, kicking up dust and ash. Figures emerged from its belly, tall, thin, and wrapped in cloaks that flowed like smoke. They moved without walking, sliding across the ground. Their faces were covered by smooth masks with no eyes, no mouth, just blackness. Ethan had never seen anything like them, and yet, the moment they arrived, something inside him screamed, Varaya. Flinched, holding her chest, gasping. They're pulling at the bond, she said through gritted teeth. They're trying to break it before they even touch us. Ethan stepped in front of her, raising his rifle. I won't let them, he said. Even though he felt his knees tremble, the hunters didn't rush. They moved slowly, confidently, as if they already believed victory belonged to them. Then one of them raised a hand, long and bone-thin, and pointed at Ethan. His chest burned instantly. Right where Varaya had bitten him, he dropped to his knees, gripping his ribs. Feeling heat and pain spread through him like fire. Varaya screamed his name and ran to him, falling to her knees and placing both hands on his face. Stay with me, she said, her voice fierce and cracking with panic. You're stronger than they think. You're not just human anymore." Ethan looked up at her, sweat pouring from his face. "I feel you," he whispered. "I feel everything." Viraya closed her eyes and pressed her forehead to his. She began to hum a sound that wasn't a song, but something older, something deep. The pain inside Ethan's chest slowed, like waves pulling back from the shore, and then it stopped. He stood again, breath shaky but steady. The hunters paused, their faceless heads tilting slightly. Viraya opened her eyes, and they glowed with fury now, not fear. "You want to break our bond?" she shouted. "Then come and try." She raised the spear, and for a moment, the sky flashed silver. The air around her rippled, and the ground under her feet cracked. Ethan stood beside her, blood dried on his wrist, fire in his eyes. He didn't know if they could win, but he knew he wouldn't let her fight alone. The hunters moved in perfect silence, spreading out in a circle. The battle hadn't started yet, but the world already felt changed, because for the first time, a vampire girl and a human stood together, not running, not hiding, and in the stillness before the storm, one thing was clear: if the hunters wanted blood, they would have to earn it. The first sound was not a scream, not a gunshot, not even a roar. It was a heartbeat, loud and slow, echoing through Ethan's chest like a war drum. It wasn't just his heartbeat, though it was hers too. Their bond pulsed between them like invisible fire, and the hunters could feel it, could taste it, and they hated it. They attacked without warning, shadows leaping forward like knives in the wind. Ethan fired his rifle, hitting nothing but smoke. Viraya spun her spear in the air and slammed it into the ground. A shockwave exploded outward, throwing two hunters back, but more came, endless and silent, moving without weight. One of them reached Ethan and slammed a long hand against his chest. He screamed, feeling something inside him twist and pull, like the bond itself was being torn. Viraya stabbed the creature through its side, her hands shaking but fierce. It hissed without a mouth and vanished into dust, but Ethan was already falling, blood on his lips. She caught him before he hit the ground, his body cold, his breathing thin. "No," she whispered. "Not you, not now." The bond burned between them, but it was fading fast. He looked up at her with tired eyes, lips barely moving. "Take it," he whispered. "Do it, Viraya, please." She knew what he meant, but her heart broke just hearing it. She had promised herself never to bite him again. Not fully, not like this. But he was dying, and if he died, so would she, not just because of the bond, but because she finally understood what he meant to her. She leaned close, her fangs sharp and glowing in the dark. "Forgive me," she whispered, and then bit deep into his neck. This time she didn't sip, didn't stop. She drank until the bond burned bright like a second sun, and something inside her exploded to life. Her eyes turned gold, her skin shimmered with silver light. She stood up slowly, Ethan in her arms, glowing with ancient power. The hunters froze, their shadows flickering like dying flames. They sensed something they hadn't felt in 1,000 years: fear. Viraya raised her hand, and the air bent around her fingers. With one wave, light shot across the battlefield like a wave of fire. The hunters screamed without mouths, their bodies cracking like glass. One by one, they shattered, leaving nothing behind, not even dust. She stood alone in the silence, the world still trembling under her feet, and in her arms, Ethan opened his eyes, not weak, not broken, but alive. The glow in his chest matched hers, soft and steady. "You survived," she whispered, not believing it. He smiled weakly. "I told you, I'm not just human anymore." They sat there together, the wind finally returning, the birds singing again somewhere far off. No more hunters, no more fear. Just the two of them and a bond that could never be broken. Viraya looked at the sky, then at Ethan. She had lost everything before, but this time, she had saved something, and more than that, someone had saved her too, not with a weapon, not with power, but with kindness. They rose together, hand in hand, Two creatures from different worlds, one born from blood, the other from hope. Now something new, something stronger, something no hunter would ever touch again.